We're back. We've been reporting this week on efforts by Republicans in some states to change the way votes are counted in order to give Republicans a major advantage in future presidential elections. It's an effort that has picked up the most steam so far in Virginia. The legislation was introduced there would allocate their electoral votes based on congressional districts instead of winner take all, the system we have now. The goal seems obvious: to dilute the urban vote, the ethnic vote, if you will, or the black vote, whatever you call it. That last night I called that Mickey Mouse gimmick to win elections without having to actually win the most number of votes. Thankfully, not all Republicans have joined the Mickey Mouse Club on this one, and there are indications today, good news for everybody, the Virginia bill might be heading toward defeat. State Senator Ralph Smith, a Republican, said this morning he thought the plan was a bad idea. And Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell also said today he was opposed to it. Also today, former Mississippi Governor Haley Barbour told Andrea Mitchell he was skeptical of the plan. Let's listen.
I like it the way it is, but as I say, I am more of a traditionalist conservative, and if people want to do that, it's obvious that states have the right to do that.
Republican legislatures in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, in Ohio are proceeding with it. I'm just asking, is this the right move for the party nationally?
Well, and as I said, I would not be for it. I don't think there's any sort of national movement.
Well, more Republicans come to their senses. We'll see. Steve Kornacki is a host of, or actually co-host of MSNBC's The Cycle every afternoon, and Hillary Shelton is Senior Vice President for Policy and Advocacy at the NAACP. Mr. Shelton, thank you for this. When you first heard about this, what did it smell like to you? What was your sense of why people would be doing this kind of thing, of breaking up the states in the Electoral College, having them vote by CD so that the rural areas would have more clout? What did you smell when you saw that?
Well, it seemed like a real fraudulent approach to try to undercut the process, to try to win elections regardless of the consequences. At a time when we should be moving as a nation to make sure we're more democratic in the process, that more Americans can participate, to make sure that the outcome of our elections are consistent with the popular decisions made by those going to the polls, we have this move to undercut all of that. It's a big problem, and it really stinks in us in so many ways.
Well, that's what I think. Just talk about the state I grew up in, Pennsylvania, where you have a large minority population in Philadelphia. And, you know, it's not all black, it's half and half. But the fact is, that's where the Democratic Party's base is. And you got an 85% turnout for the Democratic Party for President Obama. Basically, all those votes would be treated just like any other CD. In other words, no matter how many, they won the city by, your party won the city by, or the Democrats by 500,000, Philadelphia, a plurality. That would all be ignored by this new system. You know what's going on here. What they're saying is, ignore the numbers, go to county by county, basically counting this thing.
Well, absolutely. And then when you take a good look at it, what ends up happening is we have to figure out some way to rectify how it is that Americans came out in what's supposed to be one of the most effective democracies on the face of the earth and voted. But somehow or another, the popular vote didn't match up with the Electoral College vote. But the person was elected into the presidency anyway. That doesn't sound like democracy to me.
Yeah, well,
it also sounds like some of our friends throughout the world would hold us accountable for.
Well, we got Bush that way, and we got through 8 years of Bush, at least the first 4 that way. Let me go to Steve. What do you think of it, Steve? It does seem like there's some hesitancy here. Even though they can technically say this is fair, it smells. It looks like an attempt to kill the minority vote in the big cities. That's what it looks like.
That's what it looks like, and it's more than that. First of all, no, I don't think it's going to happen. It's not going to happen in Virginia, and I don't ultimately think it's going to happen in these other states. But what it speaks to is it's not just trying to sort of isolate the minority vote. It speaks to how the sort of emerging Democratic coalition, that's African American, that's Hispanic, that's also single women, that's young professional, that coalition more than ever is tightly bunched in metropolitan areas, cities and directly around cities. There's a statistic that's floating around. I think Dave Wasserman from the Cook Report came up with this. If you look back at 1988, when Michael Dukakis got slaughtered by George Bush Sr., Michael Dukakis carried over 800 counties nationally that year. Yeah. Barack Obama this year, winning by 5 million votes nationally, won fewer than 700 counties. That's how tightly packed in today's Democratic coalition is. It's enough to win the popular vote by 5 million votes nationally, but it's not spread out. And so you get, state after state, blue state after blue state. If you went to this congressional-based system, Romney would have won the election last November.
That's because people who are liberal tend to like to live in cities. Gay people, I think, go to big cities. I think these are patterns we've seen a long time ago. Anyway, when people say this is an effort to steal the election, this attempt by the Republicans, here's what they mean. If the electoral votes were divvied up by congressional district in the 2012 election, we'd be reporting on Mitt Romney's first week in the White House tonight. Here's a map from the 2012 presidential race of states Obama won versus states Romney won. That's the usual electoral map we use in this country. If the Republican plan was put in place nationally this past year, you'd have to replace that map with this one. All those districts, in red, are all electoral points for Mitt Romney. What does this mean? It means even though Barack Obama won by nearly 5 million votes and carried the Electoral College by 232 to 206, if the Republican plan was in place, we would have lost to Romney. He would have lost to Romney 262 to 276. What do you think would happen? Let me ask you, how active is the NAACP, Mr. Shelton, in fighting this? Are you in the courts on this? Are you out in the legislatures? Or how hot are you getting on this thing?
Well, primarily in the legislatures right now. Our state conferences in Virginia and Pennsylvania and other places that have introduced these measures are very actively engaged. We've seen what happens when you redistrict, when you reapportion after the census. We know the games that are played in what is probably the most highly partisan process that we have in our political system. Now take that and use that to determine how indeed we're actually going to elect our president. What we have in that case is yet another undercut of the integrity of a system that's so important.
And right, it just ramifies the whole thing. There's enough crap going on at the state level without making it a national problem. Anyway, thank you, Steve Kornacki, and well said, Mr. Hillary Shelton of the NAACP. When we return, let me finish with the excitement over this new collection of memorabilia from the life of Jack Kennedy. I know all about this stuff. You're watching Hardball, the place for politics.